Hey folks, Rob here, bringing another unbagging, and as promised, we're going to be looking at ASL Journal number 13. A lot meatier than number 12. You can see it's a lot thicker, and it looks like we're going to have a board in here as well, and the usual number of scenarios. Actually quite dense, so it looks like we're going to get a dozen or so scenarios, maybe more, and let's open it up and see what's inside. Alrighty, there we go. Nice thick, rather heavy. So it looks like we have the usual substantial magazine material. Yeah, we do a bit of board. Nice thick 1/4 inch worth of scenarios. And looks like we're going to have a couple of the mini scenarios with including maps. So let's look at what we're going to get. The magazine itself is rather slim, and of course you pay more or less for the goodies themselves that are included with it. Interesting cover art. It reminds me a lot of World War One more than the World War Two. Little minesweeper action going on as you're trying to work your way through the lines. Interesting. All right, so what do we got? Umpire's View, Hatton and Flames. We got first impressions of the CG1. As I said, we're coming up with solitaire rules for this one. Currently being play tested one of the missions, so hopefully I get a couple more guys that want to jump on and help me play test that. Elevating hull down positions. We have Advanced Nuggets 2. More rules I had wrong. This is Paul Sidhu and Spilky. Again, 2 veterans of the system, coming up with rules that a lot of guys get wrong, I imagine. Second impression, alternate OBA system. Chit replacement right for you from Jim Bishop. Should be interesting. DZ, same Wrigley. We're going to get preview of the new Hassle, which of course is already out. This one was printed in, I assume it's going to be like 2018. Where's the publication date? 2022. So yeah, DZ, same Wrigley is already out. Forgotten War designer notes as well. The Mad Minute redo. We're going to look at the Tale of Two Scenarios. Never played that scenario, the Mad Minute, but from what I understand, it's a real blast, pun intended. Royal Marine Commandos in Korea, and then we have a some errata as well. All right, so first up we have Hatton and Flames. This is, of course, a campaign map. Little French village and snow all over the place. Takes place in January 45, and it's kind of weird the way that the units come in. I'm not going to cut that. Yeah, it looks really interesting from a late war perspective. The units themselves they're not super elite. You're like first line Americans, first line Germans. You're not looking at the elite SS or the 747 Americans. There's not much in the way of engineers and pioneers in this game. It's strictly, first line action against first line. So from that perspective, it's quite good. Mix of armor. You have infantry as well. There's OBA limited, I believe, to 1 module aside. And there's a lot of attacking back and forth as they fight over the town itself. So it's quite interesting little, not quite a mini hassle, but it's a bit larger than that. Certainly isn't Valor of the Guards or Stalingrad, but it's a nice little happy medium. So they break down the different OBs. And something else that they do is you buy companies, and it's limited by days. So this is, I believe, it's like a 3 or 4 day hassle, and each day you're allowed to buy certain companies for that day, and some of them don't become available until subsequent days. So it's quite cool that way. The way that you can do that, you can buy platoons or sections as well. Again, they come available at certain times. And sometimes you might miss out if you don't buy them at certain times. So all in all, it's an interesting setup and design and flow of the way that you bring in your units. All right, so hull down positions and how they work. I have to be honest, when I see math tables like this, my eyes glaze over. I freaking hate math. Now, for those of you that love math, you're going to love these kinds of tables because it's all about hit percentages. And sometimes when you want to take those shots and when not. For me, when I see a target, I have no problem rolling the dice because more than likely you're going to land up somewhere in the middle because of the bell curve. And I'm not afraid to take shots typically. I'm not afraid of intensive firing either, just because on the off chance you might actually get the hit that you require. I'm not going to mentally calculate whether or not it's going to be worth it or not, unless it's clearly the modifiers are going to be so bad you're looking at needing a snake eyes critical hit or maybe even improbable hit. Then those kind of cases I probably will not take the shot, but I'm not going to be calculating percentages to this level of degree. Kudos to you guys that do that kind of stuff. I wish I could, I really do, but I do not. One thing I do not do a lot of is whenever I'm coming up on a hill position is attempting to do a hold down maneuver. It's fairly free because all you need to do is have a couple of movement points and then you make a die roll and you have a chance of actually hold down in your vehicle and thereby actually saving your armor. So it's very important to do that sometimes. Obviously, certain cases you would not want to do that. And of course, always taking advantage of stone wall positions or even driving into a building just so you get the TEM to help you in those cases as well. I'll take advantage of stone walls, even the soft TM from a hedge or something, but the yeah, calculating the hull down hit percentage is not my bag. Advanced Nuggets 2. Again, more rules. This is a continuation from the Journal 12. Um, more rules a lot of guys get wrong. Trying to see if there's anything that jumps out at me right away. Oh, here's one. An AFE wreck and bypass does not add a hindrance unless LOS touches that hex side. Interesting. So, which obviously kind of makes sense when you think about it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. This one I picked up relatively recently, D2.36 and D6.5. Passenger riders can be dropped off while in bypass of a woods building and move into the train itself after any defensive first fire versus them at the covered arc focal point. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is they need to have the move available. So if you used up your last quarter of your vehicle's movement rate, they don't have enough move to enter that obstacle, then they're not going to be able to do it. I believe that is the case. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the case. So you need to have at least two move worth of movement points left to have your troops drop off into the building that you're in bypass of. I believe I read that in one of the errata or QA journals. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm going to throw up a bullet point in the slide or in the video. Quick look at the map. That is a shitload of grain and hills. Wow. Board 77. That is interesting. I gotta be honest, I don't know if I like that. Who would grow grain on the side of a hill like that? Radio contact essentials. So, for those of you guys that got radios, probably going to be a good article. Russians, remember, you have different radio numbers for different days, or sorry, different years. You're going to have to maintain contact. Different percentages as well, something to bear in mind. So, if you're not going to actively try and use OBA, you probably don't want to necessarily roll for radio contact, because if your radio breaks and the next turn you do want to try and bring an OBA, you might be SOL. Yeah. All right. And then we have probabilities pertaining to OBA draw piles. Something with OBA that is hit or miss, and one reason why, if you've heard of the Pleva rule with OBA chits, where whenever you draw a red, it gets returned to the pile and another red chit gets added. So you never actually lose permanent access to OBA, it just gets more difficult. Is that sometimes missions are written where the OBA is very crucial to the success of the scenario. And when you draw two reds right off the bat, your OVA is useless, or even one red. And sometimes nationalities have really bad draw piles, like the Russians with five black and two red. It's not really great odds. And you look at the Americans with 10 black and three red. You're looking at it clearly favors American artillery. You would think Russians with near the end war would have so much more artillery, that they would be more plentiful as it goes on, which I think is factored in a lot of scenarios, maybe. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a very hit and miss opportunity, let alone the fact that sometimes, depending on your die rolling, it could take you a while to walk your artillery onto where you want it. And by then, barring a defensive position, usually the enemy's moved on. So if you're trying to use artillery in the defense, it's very difficult to land it where you want it to land in time to affect the attacker. So it's very hit and miss, literally. And that's why you can see a lot of, I wouldn't say house rules, but alternatives to the standard rule for using OBA. So what Rich Spilky is referencing appears to be an article that appeared in the Journal, number 24, number 2, or volume 24, number 20, or number 2, way back in the mid 80s. Wow. Offboard artillery introduction, first impressions. And here's a look at draw piles and expected number of fire missions. So yeah, you're looking at 6 black, 4 red. You can expect to get 2 and a bit missions, whereas you're looking over here at the 10 black, 2 red. You're looking at the American draw piles, 10 black, 3 red. Like I said, you're looking at least 5 missions. Huge difference. And when you're looking at the larger caliber sizes, the 150s, the 200s, if you will, getting 5 missions like that is devastating, as opposed to getting maybe 2. Yeah, German 8 black, 3 red. Typically, you're going to get 4 fire missions, which is fairly standard. And you throw in plentiful or even scarce ammunition, throw in pre registered hexes and things like that, and you can add or decrease the number of expected fire missions that you're going to get. Yeah, so here we go with the Russians, complete drop off. Obviously, you can only get a maximum of 5. You throw in a pre-registered hex, you might get a 6, but look at the percentages of getting that. It's just it's not going to happen that you're going to draw a 6 black and not get 2 reds. Just the odds of that actually happening are just inconceivable. So if your mission or scenario depends on that artillery coming down to hammer your opponent, um, it's not going to be good. So, an interesting article on artillery, and gives you several variants that you may want to use. So this is the Pleva variant. And right here, this little box here, this is the actual Pleva rule that I was just talking about. So it explains it. If you're unfamiliar with it, again, the article in Journal 13 explains it. You can find that information online as well. A lot of people are using one. Lone Canuck loves this one because he puts it in all of his missions lately. A lot of scenarios, excuse me. The Pleva rule. It's quite popular. I like it myself. I'm including that in most of my solitaire rules for the friendly because it's just a good way, I think, to guarantee. Well, not guarantee, but it's less likely to lead to frustration with the OBA. And this is a an alternative view to using alternate OBA systems from Jim Bishop. So, um, which takes probably the more standard view. I'm just guessing. I haven't read the article yet, but Jim Bishop is probably going to take the opposing view that at the end of the day, it's just another chit system that's going to uh, polish for the sake of polish. Um, is it worth changing for the sake of change? So here he's going through quite in detail. This is quite the OBA magazine. This is really going to be interesting. I'm going to have to give this one a good read. Where he actually, this is a counterpoint, where Rich Spilky talks about it, and then Jim Bishop counterpoints, talking about the other side, I suppose. All right, a little preview of Saint Maria. Most of you guys probably already have this, including cows. Why cows? I don't know. They were very prevalent apparently on the battlefield, so I guess they decided to add that. Forgotten War designer notes. I always love these designer notes because getting information on why and how they did certain things, certain design choices, is always interesting. And it gives you a little bit of history about it as well. Look at that hill. Imagine trying to maneuver on that road. Switchbacks everywhere. Tale of Two Scenarios, the Mad Minute. So this one has Americans and Germans basically coming on board and just smashing the shit out of each other in the course of literally a mad minute. A lot of armor on the German side and guns and armor on the American side, and it is a slaughterfest. It's supposed to be quite a lot of fun, from what I understand. Again, I've never played it, but I believe it's highly thought of. Royal Marines in Korea. Those are always hard bastards, those Royal Marines. Quite a lengthy article on that, too. Green Berets in Korea. Interesting. Oh, that's the Royal Marine Green Berets. And a debriefing. More errata for the sake of errata. Again, once you get into the electronic rulebooks with the constant changes, it's clearly going to be the way of the future. I did see several binders at Caslo, so those are still being used. But with tablets being so relatively cheap nowadays and common, electronic rulebook is just so you can't compare the two. And the fact that they're going to constantly be updating it once you pay for it, you're going to get constant updates. Everything fits nicely. Everything's hyperlinked. You're bouncing around the rules. Searching for a rule is just so easy. There's just no replacing it with this. In a few years, this is just not going to, I don't think it's even going to exist. Look at all this. I mean, you can replace this with a simple PDF. But they still have to do it until such point as that happens. All right, so that is the magazine. Several good articles in there on Hull Down and OBA. Let's look at this. So we have one cutout that is quite the row house with the church right in the middle. X20. We were looking for this actually for Caslo. It's one of the buildings we needed for one of the maps. We ended up doing the Vassal map printout. Not sure if that's legal or not, but we did for the tournament. Everybody loved the printouts, and it's a super handy way to get all the overlays on your map without no muss, no fuss. Yeah, Board 77. What can you say? Yeah, it's Board 77. Four level hills, green all over the place. Um, I don't think I like it. I gotta be honest. You're sucking up half a move extra every time you move with grain in season. It's going to be really slow going uphill with grain, is what I'm getting at. All right, let's start at the back, and we're going to look at these ones. These ones are a really good idea. I've been seeing these around a couple places, and they are phenomenal. One scenario and a map all on one little sheet. Got your little simple OBA. For you starter kit guys, these are the kind of things you may want to look at if you want to transition to ASL, because small OBs, relatively, everything's self-contained, and you got everything you need to do a small little scenario. They can be a little bit complex with the terrain, as you can see here. We're looking at partisans and Russians. You're gonna have to figure some stuff out. Maybe not this particular one, but these kind of maps you may want to consider to get into the full ASL. Forest Brothers. Partisans versus Russians. Interesting. Lithuanian partisans versus Russians. Yeah, they didn't like each other very much. Hot toddy. So this one, we got a little railway action going on. Germans versus Allied forces. I assume these are some kind of... no, I thought they were something else, but they're not. We got some American 501st Parachute Infantry, and we got some British as well, versus some German rear guards, and on the October 44. So I assume it's going to be some kind of blow up the railway kind of action. No train, though. That's kind of sucks. Hot toddy. Interesting. Reckless Raid. This one I've seen somewhere online. Somebody was playing this one, I think. I'm not sure who. But again, we had gliders, and you got the airfield. Was this Stu playing this one? But I saw, or maybe it was Neil playing this one. But I saw this one being played, and it was quite interesting. Romanians versus Germans. Romanians arriving in gliders. That is interesting. August 44. Down number 2 row, Japanese versus Americans. So we're going to have PTO. Again, very small, very doable in probably a couple of hours. Another Chaz Argent design. All right, let's get into the actual scenarios proper. Journal 194, we have Japanese versus Chinese. One thing Dave and I want to do is eventually drift back into PTO, not right now. This one is a rather large one. You're looking at 31 Chinese squads, only against like a dozen well, maybe 20. 15 to 20 or so Japanese units with some guns. Actually, it looks like we're going to have almost 35 Chinese with some armor against really undermanned Japanese units. Wow. Japanese air support, Chinese air support. It's got everything. Such faith. It looks like we have some kind of invasion going on here. Ocean overlay. And we have Albania 39. Albanians versus Italians. Seaborne assault from the Italians. Interesting. Blood amongst the pines. So this, we're jumping over to Finland. We go from Albania to Finland. What an extreme. You've got 6 Finlanders versus 10 Soviets. So again, starter kit guys, this is probably something you may want to try. It is board 72. So if you're on Vassal, obviously it won't be an issue. Getting board 72, I have no idea where that one is. Probably one of the ASL scenario packs or something like that. Russian early war doctrines in effect. Personal on both sides have skis and winter camouflage. And you have night. Okay, so maybe not this one. There are a lot of extra rules. Deep snow is in effect. All buildings are wooden and ground level, so that's familiar. Obviously, wood and green hexes are pine woods, and um, the woods are conforming to the green depiction. Okay, so you have woods and you have pine woods. Night rules are in effect. Base NVR is 3. Both sides are NVR. Majority squad type is normal. Nice small all infantry. This one would definitely play better on Vassal than on a real board. Anytime you have to imagine wood and grain hexes as being something else, it's always better on Vassal. Death on the French coast, back in France, May 1940. Looks to be fairly involved. We're looking at a dozen or so French units with some early war armored cars and a car, singular, and a couple of guns versus some onrushing Germans who are on motorcycles and armored cars and half tracks and trucks. Valley of Glory, Russia 41. Fairly small, again, 16 Russians versus 7 Germans. We've got an 81 mortar on their side. So we got 3 tanks and 16 Russian squads against 7 Germans. Russians suffer from ammo shortage. Well, that's not that bad. Too rapid in advance. Another small one, relatively board 77, the good old hilly grain one. Russians are in defense. Alternate setup. Russian moves first, and the German. How does that work? September 41. We have alternating setups, Russian, German, and Russian. Russian moves first, and German set up second and enter on turn 2 along. Interesting SSR. SS units have an ELR of 2. All of the German units have an ELR of 4. Why? Journal 2000, One Story Town. Looking about 2030. Almost 30 Russian squads versus a good 25 or so. 20, 25 Finland squads with some tanks. Commonwealth setup versus Japanese, January 42. Down by the river, you're using 3 half boards, got 2 overlays in it, 5.5 turns, so fairly small. And despite the large numbers of counters, is actually small OBs, not huge. You're only looking at 19 Russian and about the same 18, 19 German squads down by the river. April 42, so fairly relatively small, I would think, for the time. Death of the Cement Plant uses parts of board 79 and half of 22. Small numbers once more, 5.5. You've got late reinforcements coming on in turn 4. You have 628 Marines coming on for 3, helping out with their 13 squad cohorts. Italians versus Americans, 4.5 turns, 2 boards. That's in Tunisia, November 42. I imagine the Italians are going to have a hard go. There are 2 second-line American squads with a gun and a half-track. And then there's going to be 3 infantry, 509th Infantry coming in. And against that, you have 8 Italian squads with looks to be 12 tanks. Strike that. 8 tanks and 4 trucks coming on. That is not a lot of American defenders, but they're second line 5-4-6s versus the 8-3-4-7s, so sure it'll be somewhat balanced. Goats to the Tiger. We have Tunisia 43. Free French versus the Axis. Italians and German mix. Now we have some deluxe board action with number 206, Collect Call. And we have Partisans versus the Axis. So we have some Bosnians. We have Germans. Fallschirmjäger. Good old Dravar, Bosnia. I was there. Nice country. When the war isn't on. 207 unhorsed. So we're going to have no cavalry despite the name. They have 3 vehicles and 13 troops for the Americans that are attacking the Germans, who have 8 658 SS with the 75 Pack 40. 1 SSR. Easier moist and a mild breeze. All hedges are bocage. Bocage country. Panzer Pioneers 208. This is France, August 44. Americans versus Germans, 5.5 turns. Variable victory point totals for different things eliminated and or captured. Corking the Chambois bottle. France 44. This is a 2-parter. Continue on back of 2010. There we go. So we have Allies, and so this is going to be Poles and Americans versus Germans. Poles versus Germans. And they got a bit of everything. Guns, tanks, infantry, support weapons. Allies are elite. American personnel may not transfer support weapons. Yeah, that's great. And we have SS on the German side, combined with regular Panzer Division dudes, including a couple of Tigers. All right. Moment of Truth, 2010. And here we have Slovaks versus Germans. September 44. Slovaks defending against 16 Germans coming up. Uses one of the Fortenberry boards, 5 Alpha. Pete Schelling design. Right, breakthrough in the Arctic. So here we're going up to Norway again, October 44. Germans versus Soviets. Shoulder to shoulder, J212. 6.5 turns. Can't make out what kind of vehicle that is. I think it's a Stug. And yeah, AV crews may not voluntarily abandon their vehicles, so it's going to be about building control. Yeah. They should just write that into the rulebook. You can't voluntarily abandon your vehicle. They should just make that a rule. Much like kindling is NA. The troops don't go around kindling stuff willy-nilly. It's usually given a direct order from on high. That should be the SSR. Kindling is allowed, not kindling is NA. Just like SSR, troops can abandon their vehicles, not may not voluntarily abandon. Obviously, the exception being is dismounting weapons, but they have to write that into that. So they should just write that into the rule. Fluid situation, half of one board, 5 turns, nice and small. Very small vehicle complement for the Russians, and 8 squads for them with 3 leaders. 14 concealment, and they're on the defense. And you got 14 SS, well, 4 SS and 10 447s attacking into that SS police division. Raf's orders. Purchase points. So we have 6.5 turns. We have 2 possible ends besides turn 7. So we can end on turn 3 by the Americans controlling 6 buildings within 4 hexes of 72 Q2. Turn 4 by controlling 6B5 and 6Y6 and 4 hexes. Or at game end by having 1 good order squad equivalent in building 6N4. So the Americans have 3 different victory conditions that are all possible for them to achieve. And again, we have variable purchase points. So we have 4 different squad types for the Germans. Americans get 15 747s from the 507th Parachute, 17th Airborne Division. 15 747s versus 10 first and second line, and 3 conscript units on top of that. Wow. Expendable allies. So it's going to use one of the Fortenberries and 2 half boards, and we're going to have Poles versus Germans in April 45. I think it's one of the Panzerjägers. Is this the elephant? I think. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't make that one out. Yeah, I think it's the elephant. Again, AV crews may not voluntarily abandon their vehicles. So we have building control as one of the objectives. I assume in the playtest people were doing it. That's why they come up with that. A couple ISU 122s. 4 of them. Oh, that's going to hurt. First action at Jinju, we have South Koreans versus Communists. So this is Korea 1949. And very small units. 2 half boards. We have 8 Korean Marines versus 9 Communist guerrillas. 5.5 turns. So again, this is a good way to get into it. We have night rules in effect. Both sides can set up concealed. Communist guerrillas have mall capability. No star shells. Star shells are NA. Right, almost done. Dead battery. Another South Korea, 1950. This one seems to be quite large. Uses 2 Fortenberry boards and parts thereof. 7.5 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different squad types. Wrong. 5 different squad types and a half squad type as well for the North Koreans. And even the reinforcements constitute 4 different squad types. So there's a lot of variety for the North Koreans to draw upon. And the South Koreans are basically Korean Marines. And they have the 448s. Back in the saddle, 2 half boards, 6.5 turns. Mix of guns, trenches, fortifications, facing off against American 6.66s with a couple of, well, 5 tanks. Battle the barricades. Flamethrower tanks, good to see on the Americans. Love those flamethrower tanks. 13 American squads, 7.68, so some good old Marine engineers. 768. That is crazy amount of firepower. Facing off against a dozen North Koreans. And then two more to go. Hill 1277. Weird orientation of boards. And 10 British units, 668 Royal Marines versus 11 Communist Chinese. And then Den Uden holds the line. South Korea 41, Communist Chinese versus the United Nations. Netherlands Battalion. Yeah, there you go. All right. All right, so there we have it. ASL Journal number 13. Again, interesting articles. We got the rules that people always mix up by Paul Sidhu. We have two interesting articles on OBA with some alternative notes from Jim Bishop and Rich Spilky. So at least three good articles in here to read. And there seems to be a lot of Korea material in here as well. So if they're branching out, and if you want to get into the Korea stuff, again, another reason why to get this one. Again, much like my last two videos, I wait for the E versions of all these. Not that I'm going to get it, but I might. Just because the access to these, again, it's just the cost, right? It's just to get this across the border into our non-American hands is it's ridiculous for a magazine. Yeah, not having the boards sucks. Not having the physical scenario card kind of sucks because you got to print them off, and then that's just waste paper and ink. But you could trade that for the cost of a PDF, and which would still be cheaper than paying for this. But as long as these show up at tournaments, I guess we can compromise and get them that way. So yeah, I mean, I'm in Eastern Ontario, Canada, so I have more access to these than somebody in, say, Australia or even in Europe. So yeah, Journal 13, I think it's quite good. The one overlay, not sure where I'm going to put that with all the other ones, I suppose. I really don't like using overlays because they're a pain. I much rather just put them in Basel and print off the map, even if I use my inkjet printer, and or send it to Staples and print it off there. So yeah, Journal 13. We got one more to go with Journal 14, and then I got a couple of other goodies that I still have to. You can see that little pile back there shrinking. We've got a couple more goodies that we have to unpack, including a couple of scenario packs. And that's that. So this will be coming out around midnight, the video. So you'll already have seen Dave and I playing Recon Attack, Aufklärung Attack, Recon Attack, and hopefully you've enjoyed that video. It'll be live, and Dave will have a camera, and you'll see what he finally looks like. And that's enough for me. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.